accident. And something else just jumped into my head. How about the people that get diagnosed, but they don't have the resources for the treatment? I mean, that's a whole different level of anxiety.
Yeah.
Are the people at Ann's place, are they, can they handle that type of anxiety, those types of fears? I'm sure you get it all the time.
Yeah, well, the financial stress is always a big one. The medical treatment is done, by the hospitals and the doctors. We're more on the counseling side. However, because of the treatment that people are in, it can affect their families in different ways. And financial is definitely hit on a lot of our families. Somebody may have to quit their job. If it's a child that has cancer, a parent usually is with the child a lot of time, so they can't do work. People who have cancer may have to reduce their hours or quit depending on how intense it is. So financially, they can be hit hard right at a time when their bills are going up. So we do have support. Sometimes it's the stress that we're helping. We do have mini grants that we provide. There's never enough. Sometimes the bills are overwhelming. But we also work with a Hispanic population. We have a special program going down into downtown Danbury. We work with the library and the Hispanic Center. And some of those families, because they may be undocumented, don't have insurance, they don't have that support network of family around them. And so it becomes really important to develop a support community around those persons, and hearing their stories are heartbreaking.
And this leads me to my next question. I'm going to start with you, Barbara. Being a volunteer and dealing with people who are going through that type of stuff, is it extremely difficult to not get emotionally involved with the people? Because you're dealing, sometimes these stories don't have happy endings, and you're volunteering at a place where it's real life stuff. Is that a challenge?
You do get emotionally involved with the people. You feel for them, and you want to give them the hug that they deserve. You want to give them, and you know that they're going through hell. It really is not easy.
Right.
So, and when you hear a good thing about them saying, "Oh, I've got a good report. I am okay," boy, you are so happy for them, so happy, because you know what they were going through, and you felt it also. You can't help but feel and get emotionally involved with some people. You just can't, because you see the change in them while they're going through their treatment, and you can see the weight loss and the decline and all, and you feel, oh boy, let's hope they're going to bounce back.
Absolutely.
And you know what? 2 or 3 months later, they do. And you're just hoping that most cases end that way, in a happy way. But yes, Chris, you do get emotionally involved.
You get involved.
Yeah.
Jack, was there a time during your process that thank God, everything worked out wonderfully, but maybe you're having a bad day. Maybe you took chemo, was that the idea? And that's no day at the beach. Do you remember any time that, you just went there because you wanted just to sit and think, and maybe a counselor extended to you? Do you have a story to kind of tie into that?
Yeah, I actually have an interesting story regarding.
Jack has a lot of stories.
I have a lot of stories, and some of them are true.
Oh, Jack.
So when I came to Ann's place in January of 2008, let me preface this by saying there's many different groups for different cancers, for different demographics, for different age groups and whatnot. So when I was there as a 32-year-old newly diagnosed Hodgkin's lymphoma patient, there wasn't a group for people my age, and people, the young adult, patient is anyone who diagnosed between the ages of 18 and 39.
Okay.
And we have specific needs that are going to be different from the pediatric cancers and the older generations, the diapers and dentures, as I like to call them. So
Thanks, Jack.
so, because people like, someone who's just diagnosed right out of college or in college or whatever is dealing with dating issues and fertility compromises with how the medicine affect their body. Are they on their parents' insurance? Can they get insurance? Are they starting a new job where they have that 6-month window or whatever? And just like all that stuff that we go through as young adults, that's hard enough without having a diagnosis attached to it. So working with Sue Murdoch, I was like, well, where are the other young people? And she's like, well, we don't get too many of them, which is good because ideally we don't want anyone diagnosed with cancer that needs our services. But at the same time, it's like, well, I'm diagnosed as a 32-year-old. So some of the groups that are offered, like there's a men's group, but it's primarily prostate cancer survivors that are, later in their years than I am. So it's like, while they might make great drinking buddies and golfing buddies, it's different. There's a disconnect generationally and with the type of cancer, having a lymphoma. So I worked with Sue to, reach out to the local cancer centers and find young adult survivors. And I'm happy to say, 9 years later, that we have a good group of young adult survivors that meets every first Wednesday of the month. So we're meeting tomorrow night. And it's great because we have some people that were diagnosed as a child with a pediatric cancer and are now, in their 20s, where they're, a 14-year survivor diagnosed at the age of 10, but still dealing with lingering issues from what they went through as a kid. And we have people that were just recently diagnosed, and one that just finished treatment, which I'm proud to say she's doing well. And so it's great because Ann's Place now has another group to support a specific demographic, and I'm glad to be a part of that and to help cultivate that. So,
Shannon, you talked a little about your staff, and how did the place originally get funded? Was it by public funds or was it by private funds?
We get all of
The
our
locale
funding.
on Sawmill Road. Now, from
Yeah.
what you're saying, I know that has only been in existence, 5 or 6 years.
Yes.
That's where was it before? Before it was on Sawmill Road, where was it?
It was in a couple different places. Right before we were in the Matrix.
Oh, okay.
And for a
Okay.
while we were over on North Street on Peacock Alley.
Yes, okay.
And there was one other location, but I can't remember.
So did someone
Yeah.
step forth and say, we like this area? It has kind of a backwoodsy retreat kind of scenario up there. I mean, it's like it was put in the most perfect setting. Because when I was walking through with you, I remember I mentioned that to you. It was just so peaceful. It was like, I don't know what that parcel of land was meant for, but you guys have put it to the best use. How did you find that location?
Well, it's a good question. We had a whole team of volunteers working on the campaign to have a place that people could call their own and
Sure.
could come to. And they actually were in the bank ready to sign on another property. And it was a woman that was very involved. It was Nancy. It was Nancy's. She was very involved for many years, and she literally called the people at the bank and said, "Don't sign. I have a piece of property. It's perfect, and they're going to donate it." And so the land was donated. The entire building is something marvelous because the volunteers that came together to raise funds and build that property were just a tremendous troop of individuals. They raised $2 million. It's a $6 million building, and the Contractors Association of Connecticut came in. They were involved. Electricians came in. We had heads of companies putting the roof on. It was just
This is pro bono
hands-on,
work.
all pro
Yeah.
bono, all pro bono.
And if you noticed, I don't mean to interrupt Shannon, but when I was taking you through the building,
Correct.
you noticed that there were plaques around. This was donated by. This
Right.
was.
There was a lot of them, by the way.
All through the whole building. We did not forget anyone who gave even the tiniest whatever, because the faucets and the sinks, the mirrors, the countertops. Everything was donated by certain building construction people, electrician. It's wonderful, and it's all documented, and it makes the place even more warmth, more welcoming. That gee, I'm in this room, and it was donated by. Everything has its place and its donation from whomever.
And there was an area, and one thing that's beautiful about this place, folks, is that we talk about what they do for the folks that conquer. But for those who don't, there's a place where there's a memorial for people. And you're never forgotten at this place, are you, Shannon?
No, not at all.
names go up and everybody leaves their mark. Maybe they didn't make it to the top of the hill, but they utilized your service, and that has to give you a certain amount of fulfillment. I know it's sad, and that's what I mentioned to you about getting involved. I mean, you go to
It's a
work
happy
every day.
sad.
What?
It's a happy sad.
Yeah.
That sounds very crazy, but it is a happy sad.
You know, because you're dealing with people, and sometimes it's in the worst time. But there's a part of Ann's Place dedicated for those people too, right?
I don't know if we showed it to you though, did we, Chris? Did we take you out in the patio?
Absolutely, in the patio, and you
With
went
the
upstairs
bricks?
where you have the place for. Remember the upstairs you brought me, where sometimes they'll have a place for those who have they
Oh,
have
the
like memorial
right.
services and
But
stuff.
I don't know if we got out the day when we went out on the patio where the bricks have the names of people that have passed away and people
Oh,
have.
okay. Yes,
I don't know if I showed you that part.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. I didn't know. So, is there? Can a family buy a brick? Is that how it works?
Yes.
And you put their name and that must be a very nice thing. I mean, I know. You know, it's a nice thing to walk by, and if you saw your loved one there, say, hey, this place is special
Yeah.
because these wonderful people helped.
Yeah, and we'll journey with the family, however, whatever direction they need us. Sometimes we have something in the spirituality room, which do a little memorial. Sometimes people like to do something in the garden. But also with the bricks, we do some spring things where they'll dedicate a brick to their loved one that's passed on. Other people always send in their yearly gift in memory of. And I sign all the thank yous, and as I'm looking at the names, I see the same names, people who have meant a lot to this community, where people donate in their honor and their memory. And it's very meaningful. Every gift has that kind of impact and meaning behind it.
What is your day-to-day responsibilities as president and CEO?
A little of
I
everything.
think we have enough
She's
time.
president. She's president. Give me camera one, because this lady to my right is president and CEO. Okay, so she demands my respect. Okay, and everybody else's respect out there, folks, because if you're a president and CEO of anything,
It's a big job.
there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of expectations that I know they don't talk about, except when they show up on these shows where I'm going to ask them questions. So, what are the fires that you put out every day?
Well, I'm not going to answer that question yet. I'm going to be difficult.
Okay.
And I'm just going to say I am the least important person. The most important people are the clients, second are the volunteers, then my staff, and then I'm there to support all of them. They do the hard work. I'm just the support, and I'll put that out there because I know my volunteers, and they're amazing. I've worked in a lot of nonprofits doing a lot of work, and the volunteers at Ann's Place are leaders. They get in there, they run events, they know the staff is tiny and that we just don't have the time to run everything that goes on. And they just come in and do it. So I put that out there. But day to day, raising money is always top of the list. Communications and marketing, getting the word out. People who are out there in the community like Jack, who may not know about Ann's Place and are stressed and struggling and going through that turmoil, and there's a place they can be, and it doesn't cost them anything. Someone needs to tell them, and so we count on shows like this so that your viewers can go out there and say, oh, I know this place, you should do that. As a friend, you can also bring somebody, and so friends are very important to Ann's Place. Because sometimes people are really hesitant to get help. Like Jack, they're the type of person that takes care of other people. Whereas a friend can say, you know what, let's just go to one of their lectures, or let's go to an art class, and then gets them in, and then slowly they can get familiar with Ann's Place, and then maybe take advantage of some of the more counseling services. But fundraising to make sure all of those services are free, we have to raise $1,117,000 every year.
Well, this is what I was getting at before you stopped me in my tracks.
I know.
Okay, because I realize that it's not the 960 volunteers that have to do this. You have to do this, okay? And because the place is there, and because the place helps folks, and because the place attracts wonderful volunteers like Mrs. Tallarico. That means that the pyramid is taken care of at the top. And $1.1 million, you don't find that on the street. Do you get help from corporations? Is it a statewide search? Is it just in the city of Danbury? How do you go about raising those funds?
Half of our funds come from our events, and about 12% of all of our budget is from community events. These are things like a local store will give 10% over a week to Ann's Place, or somebody will hold a fundraiser in their house. They'll hold a dinner, invite their friends, and everybody donates. Really simple, from the Girl Scouts up to corporations that want to do something in the community for us. Amber Room has an event. They do a 5K race in the summertime with us, which is wonderful. And so, those events raise 12% of our budget. We have our big events like Festival of Trees. We have 2 golf tournaments, and we do a fashion show in Ridgefield every year. And so those events bring in important funds. And then we do a lot of grants. Corporate grants as well as family foundations. That's probably another $250,000.